As people who love the outdoors, we know what we stand for. We stand for fish, wildlife, and conserving places they call home. We stand for the traditions we inherited and that we must pass on. We stand for great gear, fair prices, expert service, and memorable experiences. At Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, we stand together for you. To give batters a different look, pitchers throw a changeup.
Your idea of a different look is sunglasses.
That's true. But La Quinta Inns and Suites is really taking the different look thing to a new level.
Definitely a major league makeover, starting with a bolder, brighter lobby full of comfortable spaces to let you settle in.
Or chill out in front of a big flat screen like Wingo would.
Oh, you know it. It's a changing La Quinta look to help you get in the zone and look sharp when you hit that big meeting.
Prepare to win at business with La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Book now at LQ.com.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Miami went to Atlanta to play a baseball game, but the story is all about the brawl after a first pitch controversy. I love it. They just got
a
brouhaha. Things got heated.
A Donnybrook.
And down in Atlanta, and I'm learning all sorts of new terms for it. It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike. And this is what it comes down to. We're getting ready for the show this morning, Mike, and we're talking about the game last night and a massive story out of the first pitch that caused a rumble. And you have now started teaching me all of these. They feel like old man words, which is funny that you are teaching me old man words for a fight.
Well, they're old man words that surround sports fighting culture and fighting culture in general, but a lot of them in that area. And I figure as much as, maybe the movies might try and portray it, if they do, as I say this now, I'm not sure that there's a movie that portrays a lot of band fighting, but I can't imagine there was a lot of fisticuffs or Donnybrooks going on in the yard at Juilliard.
Fisticuffs and Donnybrooks. This is spectacular. Hey, you know what? I will tell you this. Backstage, the country shows can get a little heated.
I was going to ask.
Putting up Jack Daniels and people, things do get a little heated. Did you ever get in a training camp fight?
God, it's what you do to basically take a break most of the time. Like, veteran guys will time training camp fights really well so that they'll cut a period short. Like, if you're doing a period of one-on-ones together and it's in the middle of training camp and everyone's really tired, one of the vets will usually kind of take it on themselves because there's two different levels. There's the rookies and the guys trying to make the roster fighting like me, where you're doing that to show up. Like, you want them to see, oh yeah, he's got some dog in him. Like, they'll turn on the tape later and they'll say that about you. The vets want them to cut the period short when they fight.
I'm curious because, like, when you play basketball on the road with a bunch of musicians, there's what they call artist rules. Like, certain guys on the tour, you're not going to D up as hard on. I don't care what anybody says.
So it's like the anti-Jordan rules.
No, yeah, the guy that's really like, if his face is on the side of a semi, you're not going hard at him. So when you're the guy trying to make a roster spot and one of the big guns comes at you, do you just have to take your whooping?
Well, so that happened to me in Pittsburgh. It was in OTAs, and it was a James Foote. I forget his first name, but he was a longtime linebacker there, and it was in the middle of OTAs, and the way the reps counted out, the third stringers would always end up going against the first string defense. And so it was a run play, and we're in OTAs, so we're in helmets, anything like that, but you still end up getting going pretty hard. And I locked him up, and he did not like it. Next thing I knew, I had his hand up underneath my chin and everybody on defense surrounding me, because that was apparently a tempo violation, which is something you learn pretty quick, but that's what you gotta do, stick out, man, which obviously it worked really well, because they cut me later in September.
Well, yeah, well, let's get to a little bit as we see this fight starts the conversation because of some of last night's What's Trending. Atlanta Braves rookie Ronald Acuna Jr., who had homered in 5 straight games, the last 3 against the Marlins, was hit by the first pitch thrown by Miami starter Jose Urena, and this is what it sounded like.
The wind by Urena, first pitch, hit him. Drilled him in the left elbow. Acuna, he's in a lot of pain. And now he'll turn and walk back into foul territory toward the Marlins dugout. And the Braves are coming out onto the field, and the Marlins are coming out onto the field. Brian Snitker's right in the middle of it.
680 The Fan on the call, and as you heard, it finally led to a brawl. Urena and Braves manager Brian Snitker both ejected from the game, Mike.
Yeah, Urena becomes just the 4th pitcher in the live ball era to be ejected, hitting the only batter he faced. last night. It was one and done for him to start this game. Obviously, Acuna had been coming in 3 straight leadoff homers going into this, was hot. I think 2 or 3 of them had come against the Marlins, so very clearly battling back against the guy that had just been beating them around the yard. And the reactions to the fight are always almost as interesting as the fight itself. But Acuna got hit in the elbow. Like, anyone who's gotten hit with anything before can tell you that's a spot you'd like to avoid, because for them, especially as they look at the streak that this kid's been on, that's a spot that could cause some serious injury. I mean, so that's the very serious part of this you worry about. The fight reactions are always fun.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, no shock to anybody. I get hit in the elbow and I go full Peter Griffin for like half an hour just moaning in pain. So I can't imagine an actual baseball.
Hard to fiddle with a bum elbow.
Well, that is very true. See, look at you finding a reason of positivity for me. Wilson Ramos became an instant favorite with this new team. He had 3 extra base hits and 3 RBIs, helped the Phillies beat the Red Sox 7-4 in his first game, wearing red pinstripes.
Yeah, so he had been acquired July 31st, but had missed the better part of a month with the strained hamstring. So this becomes his 2nd career triple and his first in 7 years in this instance. Getting there. Big man, I mean, coming off a hamstring too, took a while to get going. A lot of inertia there trying to hump it around the bases. But for the Phillies, they're 2 games back of the Braves in the NL East. Percentage points lead over the Brewers for first in the wild card. So this could be well-timed production if this becomes consistent.
I think that's the biggest thing. When you talk about the production, you're looking at it from the Philly standpoint. And let's remember, they're in the thick of having an opportunity to do something pretty special. So getting that kind of production right out of the gate, he actually commented later that he's going to remember it much like he remembered his first game in Major League Baseball. I think it's interesting. You think about what it's like to be traded and find yourself in this situation and now have that kind of a first night. I mean, it's a special moment, and momentum matters right now. Late in a marathon baseball season, the more baseball minds I talk to, the more I get the sense that it matters that you get sort of that reset and you get that opportunity to recharge a team. That can happen from an acquisition having a start like that.
And this one on a delayed reaction, like we always see, regardless of the sport, how much health matters this time of year. And if they can keep him healthy down the stretch, the Yankees are seeing the opposite of that right now as we get some news about Aaron Judge and an update on that wrist injury that doesn't look like it's ready to come back. So all of these things that you have to manage over the course of a long season.
I am so stoked for the way this playoff race is going to end, as we talk about it every day. Every time we're hanging out, we talk about the fact that the playoff race in both the AL and the NL looks so tight, so compelling. It's fun to watch. Speaking of fun to watch, the Mariners and A's were tied 0-0 into the 12th inning before D. Gordon hit a 2-run home run, only his 2nd home run of the season. Seattle holds on for the win to avoid a 3-game sweep.
Yeah, this is sort of the one people want to talk about baseball being long and boring. This is the 7th Major League Baseball game this season to go scoreless through 11 innings. So a little bit long, not a ton of run
Pitchers
production
duel, man.
there.
Pitchers duel.
Yeah, exactly. But the Mariners now 2.5 games, within 2.5 games of the A's for the AL wildcard spot. So you talk about, especially on that side, we know the AL East has been an absolute bloodbath out there with the teams involved in that division. And that's what you've got to basically keep pace with at this point. Seattle, I think a lot of talk earlier in the season and just trying to round into form down the stretch.
Yeah, and Seattle, I think, is going to look back on this little moment right now with Aaron Judge having been out from the Yankees and wonder if they maximized, right? So there's a point where every game matters so much for Seattle. Every game matters so much for the A's. They're trying to find a way to make the playoffs and maybe keep New York home, which looks harder and harder to do if you can't pick up the ground while Aaron Judge is not in.
It's a good point because we spent so much time thinking about the Yankees trying to make up ground on Boston. Not, while Judge was out, but for Boston, while Sale was on the DL with that shoulder soreness. And we saw how well that went for the Yankees, and we just sort of looked away. But out west, no one's sleeping.
Well, I'm not sleeping on this tonight. Week 2 of the NFL preseason begins tonight with the rematch of the Super Bowl as the Patriots host the Eagles at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
We got Handshake Gate going on right now. I mean, seriously, this is peak preseason headline material right here. Well, Tom Brady didn't shake Nick Foles' hand after the Super Bowl. I can't imagine, as someone who's on the losing end of a championship game, there's anything you give a damn about less as the winner than who shakes your hand from the other team after the game. Like, give me the trophy. I want to kiss the Lombardi. That's all I want to do.
I mean, that is a level of petty. If you're walking away from the Super Bowl, you're sitting in the locker room, you're drinking champagne, you got the trophy, everybody's celebrating, and then you sit there and you're like, wait a minute. That guy did not shake my hand. I mean, that is the level of hate. I think we can all agree that the Eagles have made the switch and moved on. Tonight, we all make the switch. Make the switch brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and the Watch ESPN app. The Redskins will host the Jets. That's obviously going to have a ton of eyeballs, as everything the Jets do right now is about quarterback play. And I do have to say, for all of the conversation about Sam Darnold and is he going to be the week one starter, all we can take out of the first week was that they protected their quarterbacks in such a way that it makes you, it showed you they want to get Bridgewater a ton of time and they want to take a look at Sam Darnold. That's going to be the interesting piece for how they decide what they're going to do.
Yeah, Sam Darnold, to me, the most impressive part has been the things we've heard coming out from behind the scenes with him. His preparation, how he's been able to digest their playbook so far, his mental aptitude, because the physical tools have always been there. I mean, going back to 2016 when he took over 3 weeks into SC's season, we saw that pop. We knew that was going to be there. But my worry always was he's also a guy that came to starting football later in that process. Wasn't the week one starter going into that year. Started the rest of the season, started 2017, and then it's, all right, everything is supposed to be yours. You're supposed to be this next guy. Can he handle that not having been? Because, you think about Josh Rosen and a lot of these guys, they come into these situations and they're the go-to guy right away. It's expected of them from the first time they step on campus on. Wasn't necessarily the case with Darnold.
What surprised me about the first preseason game for the Jets was that, frankly, they had McCown in for one series and then just put him away. So they're keeping him in a glass box. I realize they know what they have there, but there is some element of they're protecting McCown while they see everything else that they have. But to that extent, if you want to see Darnold start, he's got to make meteoric leaps every single week. He's got to outplay everybody every single week. So I think that's a big part of why we're going to see that happen playing time-wise.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the preseason games at the end, especially for a guy like Darnold, it really is just like a quiz at the end of the week because all the stuff you want to see is in practice. That's where you're seeing a bulk of all this come to life. And then you get to the game, and yeah, you make him put it on display there. I mean, before every game week, you take a quiz. Your position coach would usually give you a packet. You got to go through, take the quiz, hand it in, all that stuff. That's all this really is checking off the boxes at the end of the week for a guy that you already believe you know a fair amount about. You already thought you knew enough to draft this high when you got him and really got a steal at the 3rd overall pick. Every week, you're just trying to check off a little bit more. So you say, all right, he digested what we gave him this week. Now we can even up the ante more in hopes to getting him ready for a full game-level playbook in the regular season.
I cannot wait to watch the Giants and Jets continue to play out throughout the course of the year to see how these top draft picks do. It's going to be one of the best parts of the NFL season. That gets you caught up on what's trending. Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance, with more than 30 unique coverage options available. Progressive knows small business. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike. And obviously the big story last night, Acuna Jr., Ronald Acuna Jr. was hit on the first pitch. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I want to go back to it, Mike, because I find it maddening. It's insane to me that baseball allows any sort of a world where it's accepted culture to hit somebody because they're on a hot streak. And I know baseball guys going to just destroy my timeline at this point. And I don't care, because what other sport do you look at it and say, you know what? I don't want to play that guy. I don't want to face him. So I'm just going to go out, find a way, cheat, and hurt him.
I think every sport's got a little more of an element than we probably think about. I mean, certainly everyone's going to associate 90s basketball with that. I mean, this is straight out of the Jordan rules, right. If you've got a guy that great, just go and hammer time him. And I mean, NFL, that happens on every play. Like, the NFL is happening on every play. You're trying to legally hurt someone on every play.
But you're doing it illegally. I mean, it's within the scope of the rules, right?
Well, and I guess baseball, I mean, this obviously isn't within the scope of the rules because guys were thrown out, but within their packet, the catalog of unwritten rules, this starts to find its way more and more. Like we always know. What's interesting is that point, I guess, culturally, because we're trying to legislate a lot of the violence out of almost every sport at this point, right? The NBA has gone to a much more open, free-flowing style of their game. The NFL, we see the measures that they've taken. Hockey's taken fighting out of it, and yet baseball still has this archaic element of its sport firmly lodged in the modern-day game.
Could you imagine, though, in the NFL, because we just want to lump on to anything the NFL does as some sort of negative, right? Could you imagine the reaction in the NFL if you didn't want to play Aaron Rodgers, and so you just sent somebody in? You're like, all right, first play of the game, go off sides before the play starts, pick him up, throw him down. Let's just get him out of the game. Just to send a message because he's on a hot streak. That's essentially what they're doing.
Oh, I mean, listen, back in the day when, like, my dad and those guys were playing in the 80s and the 90s, you were going in there and intentionally trying to land on a quarterback and land on his shoulder and end his day early. That's kind of what the cash equivalent of is here is you've got a guy you don't want on the field. You obviously not going to go low on him or do something like that, but a lot of guys would toy with that line. Now, we see most guys now understand that there's so much money at stake for all these guys that that's something you'd probably want to shy away from a little bit more because of what a meal ticket it is now. But there is still always that mentality carried. It's just been worked out of most other sports.
Well, and you mentioned how that was the mentality in the NFL in the 80s and when your dad played, and I totally understand that. It was a different world in sports in general. The 90s NBA world was a different world in sports in general. I think that we're at a spot now where you have to look at it and say, have we evolved? And shouldn't baseball at some point evolve past this? I mean, he hit the guy in the elbow. And I'm not, obviously people will come back and say, well, it's not like they hit him in the head. You still hit him somewhere that could hurt his career. I don't understand this mindset of, I don't want to take you on as a competitor. So instead, I'm just going to try and injure you so you miss some of the game. I can't wrap my head around it. Brian Snicker, the Braves manager, talked about it after the game.
He's a young, talented kid that's a shame that happened, because what happens if they hit him there and he breaks his elbow and he's done for the year? And what we're trying to accomplish here, and there's no reason for that. I mean, heck, this is a game. I mean, my God, that was just like I say. I had 3 hours to calm down. Now I'm getting worked up again.
Good God, man.
Yeah, but I get what he's saying. I mean, and part of what he referenced there at the end, too, is, look at what they're trying to do there, particularly. When you think about the year that Atlanta's having right now, they're 2 games up on the Phillies. They're trying to accomplish something. They've got a guy that's hot, and your solution, instead of out-competing him, is just throw the ball at him? I mean, and I understand that they ejected Urena for doing it. I understand that they ejected him. To me, that's just not enough. I mean, fine, you sit him down for the game, great. But you threw at somebody and you're trying to hurt him. I don't understand how just ejecting him for this moment. I mean, I'd sit him down for as long as possible to send a message.
Well, and I guess that's the point, though, is we've been floating that as a potential solution out of this for Major League Baseball for years now. And it's not in there, which means that Major League Baseball doesn't have a problem with this, right? Like that's what you can take away is in every other sport we've talked about, there are things when you want to legislate things out, you make it a point, you put some new rule in there, and then you go forward with it. For them, this is not deemed difficult enough or bad enough for them to legislate some sort of rule to get this away, because I look at it from Major League Baseball's perspective, because within the game and strategy and all this, if you're the Marlins, yes, it does benefit you not to have that guy on the field going and just working you at the top of the order like he had been lately. If you're Major League Baseball, we talked to Rob Manfred at the All-Star break about marketing young stars and all these things they want to do with the game. Like, this is one of your young stars. This is a guy you want on the diamond right now. And based on the streak that he had been on, I mean, the month of August leads the National League in OPS, home runs, and runs scored for the month. Like, this is as hot a name as baseball has. He's a young name in baseball, and taking him off the field, if this had somehow sidelined him for any amount of time, that to me is devastating for the lifeblood of your future.
Absolutely. It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio, ESPN2. Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike. And the baseball guy often comes in and says the piece that you can't legislate is intent. So what? He threw a ball at him, and the ball happened to go to the spot where it hit him, and it was an accident by all accounts. You and I both work a lot in college football. You play college football. One of the things we've learned is that targeting, it doesn't matter what the intent is, right? If you take the wrong angle, you lead with your helmet, and suddenly you hit a guy, whether it was intentional or not, whether you were slipping when it happened or not, they'll kick you out of the game. They will force you out of the game. There will be punishment, because at some point you have to put safety ahead of intent. And one bad apple, we all learned this in preschool, right? One bad apple can ruin it for everybody. There's a spot here where Major League Baseball has to look at the what ifs. I mean, if I'm playing against the Yankees in the World Series, why not just plunk Stanton and plunk Judge? Start the series that way. All right, you got 2 guys that we don't want to face. I'll just throw at you. And that's essentially what they're doing last night.
More or less, and you're right in the fact that while targeting and a lot of those rules we may push back at, we may agree with some of the ways that it's implemented or enforced, the bottom line is there's a clear directive. This is what we do not want, and we have taken the steps to say we're not going to tolerate it anymore. Until we see some sort of action taken from Major League Baseball, we assume that this is tolerated and accepted behavior.
Well, it's tolerated and accepted because so many people have dealt with it for so many years. Keith Hernandez, the Mets TV analyst, this is what he said about the play afterwards.
Killing you, you've lost 3 games. Right. He's hit 3 home runs. You got to hit him. I'm sorry. I mean, people are not going to like that. It's, you got to hit him, knock him down. At least, seriously knock him down if you don't hit him. And you never throw at anybody's head. You never throw at anybody's head or neck. You hit him in the back. You hit him in the fanny.
You got to hit him. You got to seriously knock him down. You never hit him in the back. You never hit him in the neck or the head, he says, and that's Keith Hernandez, the Mets TV analyst. But again, the other argument people make is, well, sometimes you just lose control. So is it that you're controlling so much that you know exactly where you're going to hit him, or did you lose control? You can't have the argument both ways.
I do love that, the wild swings between, well, we're so accurate I can hit him right in the fanny or right in the small of the back here or this spot, but sometimes it just gets away from me. Like, guys, a little bit too much buttered popcorn before the game. I popped open a yogurt, and all of a sudden things have just gone to hell.
This is disgusting and irresponsible. At some point you look at it and say, you want to beat somebody, beat somebody. Don't hit them. You want to beat somebody, go out and be the better competitor. Going out and hitting somebody is just a glorified version of cheating because you can't find a way to win with the talent that you have. I will not support this for baseball in any way, shape, or form. It's gross that we're sitting here talking about these, kerfuffles or...
kerfuffle is actually that one. I feel like Steve
correctly?
Harvey. I'm looking over the board. Yeah, we're going to count that one. We're going to give it to him.
Oh, man. Let's go look at Wingo. We'll keep breaking it down over the course of the morning. But coming up, there are starting quarterbacks in the league that are trash, overrated, decent, and at best, and all schemes, at least according to one All-Pro.
Golic
and Wingo.
and Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
Jalen Ramsey has everybody fired up. We'll get to that in just a second. Do want to continue a little bit here, mostly because Twitter guys coming at me saying I'm soft for not liking the baseball, the unwritten rules of baseball. Well, Jeff Passan of Yahoo Sports, one of our favorites, wrote this. Jose Urena was too much of a coward to challenge Ronald Acuna Jr. on Wednesday night, so instead he hit him with the 97-mile-per-hour fastball. Isn't it time we started calling pitchers who do what Urena did, bury a baseball into a hitter because the hitter had the audacity to be great, exactly what they are? Coward works. So does chicken or yellow. Anything to stigmatize the stupidity of this act, which is so old, so tired, so beyond stupid, and so contrary to the objective of the game. Be better than your opponent. God, I love it when smart people agree with me, Mike.
Yeah, man, feels good, right? Coward. Let's call him names. Let's respond to his childish act by calling him names.
I'm
bury
puffed
him.
Up. You know what?
Bury him.
Here's the thing. You don't understand, Mike. You grew up big enough to fight your own fights in bars. I grew up big enough to talk a bunch of junk in bars. That's really my skill. This speaks to my people, all right? Like when
you grew up in bars?
Well, I grew up in Vegas. No, I did tour in country music for a long time. There's a fair point. I've had guys bigger than you need to bail me out of a lot of rough situations in bars. So I appreciate name calling. I think it has a real place.
I just enjoy
Nothing on that.
No comment.
All right, now it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. And Jalen Ramsey decided to give his Straight Talk in comments in GQ. And this is sort of the article that has everybody shook, as the kids say, this morning as he decided to analyze quarterbacks. And we're in a world, let's be honest here, where a Madden rating becomes a topic. Oh, this quarterback didn't get high enough Madden. Like every fan base gets fired up about the Madden ratings.
Player too.
100%. So imagine the shock and awe from fan bases across the NFL when Jalen Ramsey decides to group quarterbacks in different categories, such as Derek Carr, who he says, I think he's good.
That one made you happy. I feel like everyone fans like, please don't say anything bad about our quarterback. I want to feel good about this.
I think he's good, as opposed to Aaron Rodgers, who, quote, does not suck. That's really as far as Jalen got with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Aaron, this is like an interesting, this is my favorite reference, interesting Rorschach test, because everyone looked at this and I think got triggered by a different quarterback synopsis by Jalen Ramsey. But the one thing that I did enjoy was that Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady were kind of off to the side. Like, those guys don't suck. Like, when just asked about that, no, we're going to put that off to the side. He would not make that mistake.
Yeah, I think, you got to look at some of the quarterbacks he went after. Nick Foles, good enough, had a good team. Tom Brady, as you said, does not suck. Russell Wilson, good. So some of these are pretty, hey, even Marcus Mariota, great for their team. I don't, he's careful there with somebody they're going to play twice. Great for their team. Deshaun Watson, he'll be league MVP in a couple of years. Again, guys, he's going to be playing against, a little careful. Andrew Luck, don't really think he's that good. So he's not worried about that one. Roethlisberger shocked me. Decent at best.
So I thought it was interesting that the ones people were more shocked by that one, and people were more shocked by the Eli Manning one, than him looking at Andrew Luck and saying he thinks T.Y. Hilton and that connection has made Andrew Luck. Like, that one to me is getting underplayed throughout all this, but because he called Josh Allen trash and because he said Joe Flacco sucks, we kind of tend to focus on those ones a little more.
Well, that is true. And we also, it's been so long since we've seen Andrew Luck. I think there are still people that are like, oh yeah, he's going to play this year. So Andrew Luck isn't quite the hotbed that he was. Now, this all raises a question as we look at the specifics of who Jalen spoke about in GQ, about why. There's a point I said, think about how cautious he was with Deshaun and Marcus, two teams that look to be good in the South that they're going to play against. A little cautious there. But there has to be some motivation, right, to a guy going in for no reason and just deciding he's going to trash half the quarterbacks in the league. Louis Riddick talked about it on ESPN on NFL Insiders yesterday.
You have a guy who right now knows that he is at the very top of his game. He feels as though he can shut down anyone as far as wide receivers are concerned in the NFL. And you're going to have to do a whole lot in order to make his list of guys who don't suck and guys who are more than decent. And that can't be up and down performances. That can't be coming out of college and having put together subpar performances against inferior competition. You're going to have to earn it with Jalen. Jalen feels as though he's earned it from the league so far. I love it.
This is the interesting part, is Jalen's mindset here is not uncommon. Like, if you're to talk to most guys in NFL locker rooms, and especially most guys that have to play positions like defensive back, where this sort of mentality is just like a base level requirement in order to go out there and be good, let alone be as great as Jalen Ramsey is, you're not going to find a lot of compliments dished out to one another. Like, most guys are going to temper their praise of any guy that they're going to play against, let alone some of the names league-wide that become the big names that we always mention, because that's another sticking point, is a lot of these guys look at some guys who are paid big dollars and who get a lot of this attention that they don't deem worthy of that. And that's something that's much more common than just Jalen Ramsey. He's just the one that happens to get to go out and actually get the press for it.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the dollars, because Dan Graziano talked about that, another ESPN NFL insider, talked about the mindset of what creates this concept of overrated, underrated.
When a professional athlete says another professional athlete is overrated, he means he's overpaid. And that's how they rate each other, right? So Matt Ryan makes the most money of any quarterback in the league. He's not the best one. Ergo, overrated. Because look, 2 years ago, he won the MVP and was not overrated. He should have won MVP. He had that kind of year. Had you given him MVP last year, you would have been overrating him. When an athlete looks at another athlete, that's the scale they use. This guy shouldn't be making more money than Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and all these guys. He's not as good as they are. That's what overrated means.
And that's yesterday on the Will Cain show for Dan. And it speaks to what you're talking about, that overrated, underrated. There's a couple of spectrums that players are looking at. One is who they've faced and how they played against certain guys. That's obviously going to be part of whatever forms their opinion. The other piece of it is the one thing every single player knows about every single player, and that's what they're getting paid. I mean, there is a piece of that where you know that Jimmy G just got a massive contract. So when you're talking about overrated, underrated, you're not just thinking about Jimmy G, you're thinking about Jimmy G, the massive contract player.
Well, you are, but also you're thinking about, too, the context of their situations. A lot of what Jalen Ramsey talked about with guys was looking at their coaching situations. For guys on defense especially, and just in general, they're cognizant of, all right, how are you guys scheming us up? Are you a guy that's just going back there? We hear this criticism all the time for the Green Bay Packers and what they've done around Aaron Rodgers, which it's not a scheme that's going to get guys open. open. It's Aaron Rodgers just throwing guys open with that. We know that's not the MO with guys like Kyle Shanahan, who have done a great job with Sean McVay and that Rams offense last year. He's not going to ask his quarterback to do as much of that. They're going to get guys open more. And much like we've seen, Tom Brady penalized for being next to Bill Belichick. Like, this is just what people do. They're looking for ways to steal credit from guys.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Support for the Golic and Wingo Show podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Let's talk about buying homes for a minute. Because of rising interest rates, there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to buying a home these days. It's causing a whole lot of anxiety with folks. Well, our friends at Quicken Loans are doing something about it. They're calling it the power buying process, and here's how it works. Quicken Loans will verify your income, assets, and credit in less than 24 hours to give you a verified approval. This gives you the strength of a cash buyer. Then once you're verified, you qualify for their all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, they lock your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. Now here's the best part. If rates go up, your rate stays the same. But if rates go down, your rate also drops. You win either way. It's the kind of thinking you'd expect from America's largest mortgage lender. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Golic. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply. Based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data record. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Allie's mom knew she had a strong kick even back in the womb. And from then on, Allie was always kicking a ball and saying she was going to play pro soccer. And one day, while she was kicking a ball against a wall, her skills drew even more attention. Her boss said, "Could you please stop that and get me those quarterly numbers I asked for?" Turns out Allie just wasn't that good a talker. But she was a good accountant. That's why she switched to Geico. She knew they could save her a bunch of money on car insurance. And she sure wasn't ever going to make that pro soccer money. No, sir.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And y'all can hang out with us, 860-506-5505, 860-506-5505. Leave us a voicemail, and if it's any good, we might play it. Jason Fitz, Mike Golic Jr. in for Trey and Mike, and this is one of my favorite things that happens on Golic and Wingo.
It better be, because it's the thing I made.
Well, I love it because, you know, I'm able to say anything I want right now, and then I don't have to pay any sort of recourse for it. Like, you know, 6 months later, you guys don't bring it back. So I can really do whatever I want here, and there's no punishment.
That's the idea. We want to encourage the art of hot takery here. And so we brought this segment called Book It, where, again, if you just take your normal run-of-the-mill phrase or opinion and throw Book It on the end, like, honestly, all of Jalen Ramsey's quarterback criticisms would have been a lot better if he had just added Book It on the end of them. Then it would have been true hot takes. So that's what we do here. Devin reads us some statements, and we decide if we're going to book them or not.
All right, let's do it. Let's book it.
Put it in the books. Speaking of Jalen Ramsey, was he accurate in all of his quarterback assessments? Book it.
Accurate in all of them. I would say no, just because of it. It was the one I pointed out. I'm not going to book it. Rival. Not going to book it just because the Andrew Luck cause in here. A lot of people have been pulling the receipts on Twitter of Andrew Luck's head-to-head matchup with Jalen Ramsey. Only met once, but Andrew Luck absolutely went off. I think he had like 125 passer rating or QB rating against Jalen Ramsey, who he said was basically made by the relationship between him and T.Y. Hilton on that team. So can't book it.
Yeah, I'm with you, and for the same exact reason, because Andrew Luck is going to be healthy this year, and that's what's going to make the AFC South, in my opinion, the most interesting division in the NFL this year. I said it. That's right, because the Jags are going to be great. The Titans are going to be good. The Texans are going to be very good with Deshaun Watson. And Andrew Luck managed to take piles of trash to the playoffs in his previous incarnations. So better offensive line, to your point. I think that the Jalen Ramsey is going to have his hands full with Luck.
More importantly, I'm excited because Jalen Ramsey gets to go out and face all the people that he talked bleep about.
But he did say good stuff about Carr, so he's mostly right.
All right. We're 0 for 1 here. Let's try again. Sam Darnold will start week 1 for the Jets. Book it?
Oh, book it. I've been saying this one for weeks.
You can book it.
Highest drafted quarterback in Jets history at number 3 overall. The Jets haven't drafted a 4,000-yard passer since Joe Namath in 1967, who was the first 4,000-yard passer in league history. I think it's set up perfectly for him right now. We heard a lot about Teddy Bridgewater's great camp early on, and all of that talk has been replaced by a kid who was impressed behind closed doors, on the practice field, and in his first preseason game. I think they're just going to let him out there and just have him go spin it.
100%. I agree. I'm going to book it.
You can book it.
I think this is one of those unfortunate times, too, because the Jets wanted some great scenario in my mind where they could build Bridgewater up and create trade value by having him play great in the offseason, by having him play well in the preseason. The problem is, I don't think there are a lot of teams sitting around in the quarterback market today. Most of the teams that we looked at with quarterback deficiency addressed it in the draft. So the Jets are just going to be sitting there waiting for Teddy Bridgewater to get some sort of a great offer so they can ship him out. I don't think it happens. I think he ends up sitting the bench and Darnold ends up the starter.
The Braves will retaliate and hit a member of the Marlins when they play next Thursday in Miami. Book it.
All right, so we had Ronald Acuna get tagged the very first at bat last night. He was on that hot streak, leadoff homers for days, and all of a sudden, the Marlins decided they weren't having it. I feel like they have to, right? The reaction was just so strong. You heard Freddie Freeman and a bunch of guys after the game really with some pointed comments calling it gutless, classless. I just think when you have that kind of reaction, you saw the benches clear, nothing really came of it, but this is baseball, and I feel like regardless of how fair or right it is, they're going to retaliate. I'm going to book it.
You can book it.
I'm used to you being wrong, but on this one, you're particularly wrong, Mike Golic Jr. They will not retaliate. I will not book this. You know why? They get to retaliate for this once. All right? They get one shot at retaliation, and the fact is the guy they want to retaliate towards is not going to be in the game, right? They can't actually hit the guy they want to hit. They're going to wait, and I'm telling you, it could be like a year from now, and then bam! They're going to do it then. And they're not doing it until they can actually go at Urena. Until they can go to Urena.
I feel like that's peak baseball, though. Like the collateral damage that comes along with it. Like, well, it wasn't him, but wearing the same colors. Close enough. Like, this is as Bloods and Crips as it gets. I mean, seriously, that's the way these guys
Revenge is a dish best served cold, my friend. They're going to wait.
Major League Baseball's rules do not make sense. They do not. The unwritten rules, we can't treat them like it makes any semblance of logical sense. They're going to go out there. They're going to rip one off. They're going to make sure that whoever's in is someone they're comfortable getting thrown out, because I guarantee you that's going to be a situation where the umps are all going to be ready. They're going to be sitting around saying, nope, we got to just keep control of this from the start, but it's going to have to happen.
What if it was like before even the first pitch, like an NHL game when there's a lot of anger in a playoff series, and they just drop the gloves before the puck drops? I'd be all in for that. Just everybody plows the field, and then they just go for it. Total kerfuffle.
There you go.
Melee.
I appreciate your effort.
The Mariners, owner of the longest playoff drought in the 4 major professional sports, will make the playoffs. Book it?
Book it.
You can book it.
Yeah! Book it. And this comes down to one important thing, ladies and gentlemen, my beloved Oakland Raiders. See, because what this really comes down to is that if the Oakland A's make the playoffs, then the Raiders have to play in dirt longer, and I don't want that. I don't want that at all. So I need the Oakland A's to somehow find their way out of it, and the only way that I can see that happening is the Mariners. So I'm going to let my heart of hope take over, and we're going to let the Mariners. Plus, Mina Kimes would be so happy, our friend, dear friend Mina Kimes. I'd be so happy, so I'm happy for her, and I'm happy the Raiders don't have to kick off the dirt any longer. Therefore, the Mariners have to make it, and the A's cannot.
Yeah, I really hope she's not listening right now, because I can't book this. I want to. They're 2.5 games back right now, but I just keep looking, and this has been the story for them all year. This has been a team whose record has been much better than it should be, considering they've got a well into the negatives run differential right now. Negative 22 on the year. You look at the two teams in front of them, the A's plus 65, the Yankees plus 135 on the year. I just don't think that's sustainable down the stretch here. They've got a lot of games in that division out there left. I can't book this.
Ben Simmons will shoot a better percentage from the field with his right hand. Book it.
I mean, this is really spectacular to me.
You know what? I'm gonna say book it.
You can book it.
Right? Like, how much worse can he do? This is the biggest hole in Ben Simmons' game from last year. 78% of his shots last season came within 10 feet of the basket. He attempted only 12 catch-and-shoot field goals and made 2 of them. So I just love the visual of him sitting around looking at his left hand and then looking over, he goes, wait, I have another.
The thought that you made it this far, Rookie of the Year, like that's the Rookie of the Year. Just
impressive.
All right, I'm just going to shoot it's one thing for you to come in and be like, look, I've seen the game. I've seen your game. It's time to change hands. Like, that's fine. That's fine. I would accept that. But when you're talking about a Rookie of the Year, he shot about, 54.5% from the field last year. I'm not going to book that his numbers go better, though. Not going to do it. Tristan Thompson switched from left-handed to right-handed, entering his 3rd NBA season. The shooting percentage actually went down. It went down for a year. Then it started to move up. So maybe eventually it moves up. But for 1 year, I think it goes down.
Lastly, Rockets GM Daryl Morey is right that LeBron is the best player, and it's not even close. Book it.
Put it in the books!
All right, so for the 10th time in his career, LeBron finished top 3 in MVP voting, ties Jordan for most in NBA history. LeBron, during his run of 8 straight finals, 7 of 7, 55-win teams. He eliminated 7 of 7 55 teams in the East outside of his own, eliminated 57% of East players to play in the postseason, not including himself and his teammates, and was responsible for 9 of 11 series sweeps in the East in that span. Yeah, book it. Why not?
You can book it.
My God, if we're going to keep having iterations of the LeBron Jordan debate, at least a smart guy like Daryl Morey is giving me the ammunition I need to go out here and speak, which should be a fact at this point.
This is what he said on the Dan Patrick Show.
You just look at his ability to, generate wins and championship probability over time, and you basically break that down. And obviously, you don't need all the numbers. You can watch as well and see that, but if you basically isolate that and also look at the career he's had, frankly, I think at this point it's become a bit of a big margin actually where he's come out ahead. I know that's a little controversial.
Book it. I'm with him. Book it.
You can book it.
I love how flippant Daryl Morey is. The best part too is people are like, well, stats will lie to you. These nerds are ruining basketball, and he casually slips in there. You can watch him too. I mean, it's kind of obvious there.
I also love the fact that it's such an open admission that, you've got the GM of the Rockets, and we heard last year the Rockets so much talking about the Warriors, and there was this mindset of the Warriors were like, oh, we don't have the Rockets in our mouth. We're not worried about that. The opposite wasn't true. The Rockets admitted sort of an obsession from the beginning. Now you have them talking about the Lakers, essentially. So it is interesting to have a franchise be so honest about what they think the strengths are of other teams in their own conference and what they're trying to compete against. For him to come in and really just openly admit that about someone not on his roster, I think is significant. Also, by the way, he's right. Best player of all time. Book it.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
Joe Tessitore, ESPN Monday Night Football play-by-play guru, joins us. Joe Tess, thanks for the time, man. You're calling the Jets-Redskins game tonight. What have you made so far of the quarterback depth chart for the Jets?
Well, we spent a lot of time with the Jets in the course of the past week, and I got to tell you, when I first got eyes at training camp practice about 9 days ago, I was blown away by how sharp Teddy Bridgewater looked. I mean, he was on the money. I mean, the knee to me was seemingly no factor, spinning the ball as good as you ever remember him spinning the ball, putting it into the bucket on deep passes, and then he comes out Friday night, and I know obviously Sam Darnold all eyes, and we're blown away and how he acquitted himself, but don't forget Teddy looked really, really sharp. So it becomes this great question. Now, obviously, you got the future of the franchise there. You got a $10 million basically assistant coach, veteran placeholder in McCown. And then you got Teddy Bridgewater sitting there. That does this become incredibly attractive trade bait, or do you keep 3, which is obviously, as you know, from a management standpoint of your salary cap and your roster management, very, very uncommon, or does something present itself elsewhere in the league where it opens up, you can get some draft picks, you turn things over to Sam right away, and you just move forward with this franchise in the future?
Joe, I'm interested, when you talk to all of these guys, players and coaches alike, so much of the talk on our side is the future, what's going to happen with Sam Darnold. What are they talking about as far as expectations for this season? What do they think is a realistic ceiling for this team?
That becomes an interesting conversation because this is a team that, on whole, when you look at them, and forget Josh McCown for a moment, they are a young roster. And a team as a franchise that's going to be sitting on a lot of salary cap room come next off season. They are primed to be able to really hit the market and do something explosive. And you almost get the sense that even though Todd Bowles is in his fourth season as the head coach, that they've accepted that they've pressed the reset button. That last year was actually almost, in a way, year one. And now by moving forward with Darnold and having Jeremy Bates now his first season as the offensive coordinator and changes with the coaching staff, that this is a reset and the future starts now, and you start building and you worry about your foundation, you put the pieces together, and this is a long-term plan here. So as for this season, yeah, I mean, the expectation is at the end of this season you can say that you took steps forward. It doesn't necessarily have to be defined by did you make the playoffs or not. Now, that's weird to say in a a must-win league where results are immediate, but I think that's where it is, Junior.
That surprises me a little bit, Joe Tess, because when you talk about the last 2 years for Todd Bowles, 5-11, 2 straight years, are you surprised that they have that level of patience with the coaching staff in general entering this project of rebuild?
I think it's what they've decided on. I think it's what they've said, hey, you look around and do we want to keep spinning our wheels or do we want to take this approach? And I think they're very comfortable with that.
Talking to Joe Tessitore, the voice of Monday Night Football. I won't ever make that mistake again, Joe. Not after.
No, that was
last
bad.
Time.
That was bad. And I'm sorry about that. And I know you and I haven't worked a lot together, but you just sent me down a path there where I had to bring it. I apologize for that. And then you start talking about coffee with me. Like, of all the things, if you're going to talk coffee, tequila, or cured meats, you're just going to get me to a place where you really don't want to go, bro.
Oh, I mean, I do want to go.
I want to go on a mandate with this, like coffee, cured meats, and tequila.
That sounds like
get
a
your
great
butt down
night.
in New Haven, Connecticut, and we'll have a night of it. Come on,
Woo!
Get after it.
There we go. That's the next V Foundation auction item up for bid right there as we talk to Joe Tessitore on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. All right, outside of tequila questions, of which I have many for you, Joe.
Blanco, only answer. Move on.
Next
and don't bring me Patron, bro. We're going to Hotel California. We're going Casamigos. We're going Altos at minimum.
Oh,
Move on.
See, I knew we had a Casamigos guy. I knew I liked you, Joe. Knew
a little bit of a sellout there with a $2 billion purchase with Clooney, but still, it's good. I'm in.
All in. We're all in here right now. Let's talk about if we're all in on the Redskins or not. This has been an interesting team because when I looked at this division at the beginning of the year, there was part of me that said outside of the Philadelphia Eagles is my clear number one. You could make a case. Alex Smith comes over now as the quarterback replacing Kirk Cousins. When you look at this Redskins team in preparation for tonight, how high do you see the ceiling for this group?
Well, the questions are on defense because obviously they have to be better against the run. I think they instantly do that by the guy who, in covering college football in recent years, I don't know that there's a player that I appreciated more than Deron Payne. Especially calling that thrilling Sugar Bowl where the guy became a one-man show with the interception and then the touchdown reception. But I think he's a guy that in the middle is more than just, a two-gapper. He's a guy that can be disruptive in the backfield. He can generate pass rush from the interior. But, he can be a three-gapper. This is a guy that's going to take on a couple gaps and plus maybe get the running back trying to leak out of the backfield. So I think he instantly solves that. They just need to be better defensively. Obviously, Ryan Kerrigan gets a lot of production off the edge, but they need to be better against the run. By having Alex Smith, right away, you know what the floor is. You know that there isn't a downside. You know that things are going to be well managed. You know that you can expand the playbook a little bit, which I'm actually curious to see what Jay Gruden does and what his comfort level is with some of the stuff that we've seen with Alex Smith in recent years, how much they're willing to expand that. Also, questioning even how much we see of Alex Smith tonight if you don't have both tackles in this game. Trent Williams is going to sit this one out. There's talk that Morgan Moses is going to take a break tonight. So if that's the case, if you don't have your starting tackles, I don't think you're going to see Smith in the first couple possessions. So you'll see a hefty dose of Colt McCoy here tonight. This is a team that's playing, and Smith talked about this when we sat with him yesterday and Witten and Boog were hanging out with Alex Smith. We said, all right, where are you at this stage of your career and what's your mindset? And he's so humble. He said, I feel like I have to prove myself because of this division. He looks at the NFC East as being a powerhouse division, and he's really driven to prove himself in this division. I agree with you, it's a loaded division. There's upside because of Smith. They need to take a step forward defensively, and they need to stay healthy. That's critical.
Talking to Joe Tessitore, play-by-play for Monday Night Football, who you will hear calling this game tonight. And, Joe, what has the reaction been like internally for them? We've talked so much about defense and the quarterback position, but at the running back spot, the loss of Darius Geis, a guy who it sounded like they were really high on during camp.
Well, there's no doubt they were really high on him, but they're also, if you spend enough time with Jay Gruden, he's going to tell you how much he likes Rob Kelly. Now, last year, remember, they were banged up when it came to the running back position, but when Kelly was healthy, he was effective. The game against the Rams, he was sensational, but then the issues with the ankle and knee. But Gruden has always loved his potential. And then Chris Thompson, you know what he is in terms of when you get to the third down situations. He obviously had the broken bone last year, happened late in the season, but prior to that, he was the best receiving back in the NFL. Samaje Perine can be a first and second down guy, so they're willing to go with that committee. The issue is with Geis, he's a three-down back. You know, with Kelly and Perine and then switching off to Thompson, I think the defense knows what's coming at them. But still, they were very contented with what they had last year when they were at full health. We're not going to see Chris Thompson tonight. He's going to sit that out. You'll get Kelly. You'll get Perine. You get a little bit of a look at Byron Marshall, who, as college football fans remember, was very, very good early on in his career at Oregon. We'll see if they keep five backs. I think with the new kickoff rule, it's advantageous now to have the fifth back on your team as well as the big safety on your team, where that used to be a roster management spot of linebackers and tight ends. But with this new kickoff rule and things playing more like a punt, I think you want to keep more running backs. So I would expect Kelly, Thompson, Perine, Marshall, and they do like Capri Bibbs as well.
We're talking to the voice of Monday Night Football, Joe Tessitore, on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. The Jets-Redskins tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and the Watch ESPN app. Joe, you said something interesting to me a little bit ago when you talked about Alex Smith and Jay Gruden. You said that Gruden's comfortable knowing what the floor is for Alex Smith. So with Jay Gruden, what's the ceiling for Alex Smith?
I mean, this is a guy that last year led the NFL in passer rating. This is a guy that can obviously take advantage of things out there. I mean, pre-snap, he's elite. You got a guy who's in his 14th season. So I think this is a team that, with Alex Smith can, if things break the right way, work their way to be a 10-win team, a playoff team. I see them as, as the top end of being an NFC wildcard team. Now, I will say this, and I think you guys would feel the same way. When you sit here all off season and you size up this league going into the season, I think the NFC is as loaded as I've ever seen a conference in that middle ground. And if you put the Skins towards, the bottom middle half of that middle ground, that is a mountain to climb. Doesn't mean it can't be done. We've seen teams that have done it that have been in a similar standing where things stay the right way and you get it done. I mean, look at recent years. Look at Super Bowls in recent years. But that middle ground of the NFC is so thick with talent right now.
Really is. Talking to Joe Tessitore, ESPN Monday Night Football play-by-play analyst. And, Joe, you've got the new booth coming together this year, so we got to ask. I've seen the videos you've been putting out there. You've been back. You've been active. We've seen you guys doing hits all over the place. How's it coming together? You, Jason Witten, Booger McFarland, how's the cohesion with the unit right now?
Man, let me tell you something. First of all, these are total dudes. I mean, just dudes. Just great guys to be on the road with. All we do is bust chops, laugh, have fun, talk ball, long dinners with a lot of hydration, which we enjoy very, very much. And that gets us to a good place of just being brothers on the road, having fun. We're going to be joyful tonight, man. We are back calling ball. We've been sitting here doing rehearsal games and voiceover booths. We've been doing rehearsal games last week, up in the Meadowlands. We want to call some ball with a red light on. All right. We're ready for it, man. I'll tell you what, though. You know what I'm looking forward to? Is the post-mortem review meeting late tonight because I'm flying in Jalen Ramsey just to criticize the guys.
Oh, there we go. Bring him back down to earth a little bit. We'll see who's trash or not, right?
Joe,
no doubt.
Be honest. You're talking about fancy big dinners here. What kind of cured meats y'all eating when you're
prepping? Boog is hysterical because, Boog has been working with me on the college football side for 4 years now and often comes up to Connecticut. And I've turned Boog now into this Italian cured meat snob. I mean, this guy everywhere we go is all about the charcuterie and the prosciutto and the salami and the sopressade and the hard sausage. It's unbelievable. I've never seen a guy from Winsboro, Louisiana turn into an Italian-American snob so quickly in my life. He's all over it.
All right, Joe, first dinner, big one's out there. They come over with the tab. Who's reaching for it? Who got there
these
first?
Guys are generous guys. Come on now, but we're hanging with purple cards too. That Disney card isn't bashful. I mean, we're not bashful about that, bro. Let's go. Get yourselves down to North Haven, Connecticut. Come to Lou Doll's restaurant, my family's restaurant right there, and we'll crush it together.
You just say when, and I'm there to eat.
Purple cards out in full force, Joe. We can't wait.
No doubt about it.
You guys check out the broadcast tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN and the Watch ESPN app. Congratulations. Can't wait to hear the call. Good luck tonight, my friend.
All right, guys. Talk to you soon.
Golic and Wingo.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. I'm Jason Fitz. I'm the dumb one. Mike Golic Jr.
I try and help you guys.
I've been called dumb by better, good sir.
I know. You know what? You'll be called dumb by worse too before the day's over.
That is probably also fair.
What?
I don't know. I was going to go with you either way, just to kind of end the petty battle, because I feel like we should restart and have just a little kumbaya session, like a lot of love and support for each other.
Nah.
The pettiest show in America.
That's what's happening right now. I'm trying. I'm just trying to help make the world a better place. Everyone in sports is talking about this Jalen Ramsey article in GQ where he lights up about half the quarterbacks in the NFL. Mind you, had good things to say about Derek Carr, so he was obviously right. The writer Clay Skipper joins us on the Shell Penzo Performance Line. Clay, thanks for some time, man. We appreciate it. When you sat down with Jalen Ramsey, did you expect to get this sort of hot take openness from him?
I can't say that I necessarily expected it. I mean, I knew he was a candid dude, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to include him in sort of our new class of badass in the NFL portfolio, but I did not necessarily expect that he would pull out his phone and start going through quarterback name by name.
I guess that's the thing. Did you go and was this wasn't the original plan, so at what point did you kind of see this was trending this way and basically just abort the mission and go with this? Was there a particular comment that kind of piqued your interest in all this?
Yeah, I mean, when he just sort of started talking about, where the Q&A begins is sort of where our conversation began, to be honest. We just sat down at breakfast, and he started sounding off about the NFL draft. And once he started talking about Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, then he just went straight into Josh Allen. And so from there, it just sort of cascaded. And then, I think there was that question early on where I asked, in your opinion, what are the quarterbacks that don't suck? Because he has sort of spouted off on a few QBs before, and he just sort of took it from there.
The article on GQ is Jalen Ramsey has something to say about literally everyone. Clay Skipper wrote it. He's with us on the Shell Penzo Performance Line. Was there a quarterback name you heard that sort of made you react with shock and awe?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that the one that people seem to have glommed onto more than others is maybe Matt Ryan. But, one of the things I think that was sort of a big takeaway for me, and I think a lot of people sort of reacted to it this way yesterday, was that a lot of the things he says are pretty valid, right? And he is a pretty talented cornerback, and he obviously knows – sorry, pretty talented is an understatement. He obviously knows the game extremely well, and he has some very insightful points. I mean, I thought his points about Kyle Shanahan were pretty on point. So, there wasn't one necessarily that jumped out in terms of being like, oh, that's something I completely disagree with. Now, obviously, we'll have to wait and see how things play out this season before we'll have to come back and circle back and see how the actual performance compares to sort of what he said. But no, I actually didn't really have one that at the moment I was like, oh, that's kind of shocking.
Now, talking to Clay Skipper, GQ writer, wrote the article on Jalen Ramsey, and I'm interested because so many people since, as they've been reacting to this piece, have talked about the motives behind this for Jalen Ramsey, whether it's just self-publicity, whether he's trying to, drive towards merchandise the way we saw so many other guys do. Did you get the sense that there was anything behind this, or that this is just purely who he is?
My that I didn't have a sense that there was any sort of ulterior motive, to be honest. I think one of the things that does get lost in a written Q&A is sort of the tone, right? And so this, one of the things that's blown up is that Jalen Ramsey is talking a bunch of trash. But when we were having this conversation, it was just sort of pretty normal, pretty casual. It was not vindictive or, necessarily as menacing or as bracing as it maybe comes off in the written form. And so I don't think he was going into this with any necessarily ulterior motive. I think he's just, like he says in the article, he says he's, unapologetically him. And I think he doesn't hold back from voicing his opinion or his thoughts. And so I think he was just sort of having a conversation and was not shy about offering what his takes were on those certain quarterbacks. And then, a lot of other points that sort of came on later in the Q&A.
Clay, I want to get your thoughts on that tone regarding one specific quarterback, and that would be Blake Bortles. I mean, you obviously, in a quarterback conversation, we have to at least acknowledge that there's a perception that Blake Bortles may not be the best quarterback. When he spoke about Blake, what did you read from him sort of in his tone and body language and how he approached that conversation?
I thought he handled it pretty deftly, to be honest. I thought he, again, he seemed to have a sort of, he had digested what other people had said about Blake. He mentioned how Blake had gotten a lot of criticism, which means he sort of has probably been monitoring the noise around Blake. But I think everything he said, again, was valid. He said Blake did what he needed to do in the playoffs to get us to the AFC Championship game and to get us within, they were up by 10 in the fourth quarter, so they weren't far away from getting to the Super Bowl. And now, is that a ringing endorsement? Not necessarily, but I think that he handled it pretty well. And, I thought it was pretty funny that he did mention that they don't, he sort of threw a little playful barb in there about them not going against the ones in practice, which I thought was pretty funny.
Talking to Clay Skipper, GQ writer on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And I know for a lot of these interview requests and when you're sitting down with guys, you usually have to go through the team, the PR staff, maybe people involved in the organization. Was there any pushback from them, especially, Tom Coughlin, Doug Marrone? They don't really seem like guys that would necessarily promote this kind of behavior, even if it's something they're very used to with a guy like Jalen.
No, I didn't actually have any interaction with the team, so that's not really something I couldn't speak to their opinion on it, to be honest.
Well, in the process of interviewing and talking to him about the quarterbacks, there was more to the article than that. Was there anything that really surprised you about Jalen in general after sitting down with him?
I think the main thing is, again, I know I said this earlier, but the candor, right? I think it is very refreshing. You saw the reaction yesterday to this story, and I think because of that, a lot of athletes don't necessarily speak their mind or voice their true opinions, and it's sort of amazing. And I think personally, as both an interviewer, but also just as a football fan, it's pretty refreshing to hear a guy just give his true thoughts and everything, and not give a pre-rehearsed, media-trained answer. And so that was honestly the most surprising thing to me. And again, I found it sort of a change of pace that was sort of nice, and I think that has been reflected in sort of the reaction to it.
The article is out on GQ.com. Jalen Ramsey has something to say about literally everyone. Clay Skipper, the writer of that article. Clay, thanks for the time, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys for the interest. Appreciate you having me on.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.